I understand fair use and comply with it. I know I am within my rights. Billy Mitchell, if you try to take this video down, I will have to replace it with others. I have an obligation to my channel. This has nothing to do with Billy Mitchell personally. Billy Mitchell is a public figure, and this video is for entertainment purposes only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Greetings to everyone who took the time to click on this video.
Competitive gaming, it's very interesting, this amazing culture.
I don't believe in journalism.
Sort of like icons who were leading the gaming community.
And I mean, you're here, ask questions. A judge will think differently.
The case shall be dismissed. Sorry, sir.
Okay, very unhappy. Donkey Kong. I did not want to ruin the life of a young man with medical problems.
The so-called engineers who said 551 could not be done.
In fact, many of you may find it hard to believe that I'm here.
Until now, Billy Mitchell had only made threats about suing me, but he finally pulled the trigger.
I mean, I want to hit some people here that have kids.
This is not what I expected, to be honest.
You're the number 2, and I'm the Billy Mitchell.
Picture 1982, I mean the height of classic gaming.
Because they actually were good people who did a lot of good things for a lot of people.
We're here because they made fun of me on the regular show.
In my hand, I have the settlement.
Geez, there's so many points here, I don't know where to begin.
Billy Mitchell is one of the oldest names in competitive gaming, having set notable records for games like Pac-Man and Donkey Kong in the early 80s. The power of marketing combined with competitive gaming was largely unknown at this point, but it was something that Billy Mitchell seemed to understand. He's a successful restaurateur with his own hot sauce, his entrepreneurial image largely tied with his gaming records. The gaming part of his image wouldn't come back into the limelight until 2007. The documentary, The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters, was released that year. It focused mainly on the rivalry between Steve Wiebe and Billy Mitchell. However, more recently, he's known for scandal and lawsuits. And I mean a lot of lawsuits. As far as I know, he's tried to file at least 6, and he's on the hook for at least 1. Most of these lawsuits have to do with defamation, although as a public figure, defamation is extraordinarily hard to prove. Especially because the supposed defamation is coming from YouTubers who are talking about high scores that are decades old. However, the major twist of irony behind these defamation claims is the main focal point of today's video. Now, I'm not sure how much of the writing or the production Billy Mitchell had to do with, but you can clearly hear his voice as the narrator, so he's involved somehow. Plus, this was at Southern Fried Gaming Expo. That's essentially Billy Mitchell's stomping ground. I am talking about a musical play, a theatrical production narrated by Billy Mitchell. A play about Billy Mitchell and how he's going to fix his public image. And since this play is less like a documentary and more like a fan fiction about oneself, Billy is free to rewrite the past and portray the future however he pleases. This is not only a theatrical representation, but a real-life cornucopia of drama, misinformation, rivalry, production errors, 80s synth pop, video games, and mom jeans. As new characters and narratives are introduced, we will branch off and take a look at the deeper context behind them. Without further delay, I present Arcade Fire, The Redemption of Billy Mitchell.
King of Kong, you must be wrong.
The cast. I have to say, I have a lot of respect for the cast and producers. To be able to perform this takes a lot of guts and confidence. Not only is it a live performance in front of an audience, the topic of the play has to do with a contentious argument on the internet that was popular at the time. With what's written on their website, it seems they're aware of the memeability of this content. Taking risks and trying new things in entertainment is something that I talk about on this channel quite a bit. There's certainly an amateur quality to it, but I wish there was more stuff like this on YouTube. I'll even go as far as to say you should hire this company to put on a show. I can't imagine having a bad time with people who are willing to be involved with a Billy Mitchell play. That's not a joke either. If you're not able to have fun with the actor who's willing to play Walter Day or Billy Mitchell, then I don't know how you can have fun. What we're here to focus on is the connection this play has to Billy Mitchell's real life. The characters. Although an actor is playing Billy Mitchell here, Billy Mitchell was involved with the production of this play. The real Walter Day and Brian Koo were also contacted about the production. For those of you who are less familiar with this rivalry, these three are essentially on Team Billy Mitchell. The two other main characters, Steve and Nicole Wiebe, make up the other half of the rivalry. As far as I can tell, they weren't contacted in the making of this production. Nobody from Steve's camp was. This will become more apparent as the plot unravels. For now, let's take a look at Steve Wiebe's character portrayal. I think all there is to say here is this is not an accurate representation of Steve Wiebe whatsoever. I know there's not a lot of people lined up to play this role, but all the other characters are accurate. Not only that, but in the play, Steve Wiebe is far more conceited and toxic than he is in real life. The representation for Steve's wife, Nicole, is also way off. So the two characters with the least accurate and most negative portrayal are the only two characters who weren't directly involved with the writing and production of the play, not counting minor characters.
The video game craze was born.
The narration. It's clearly Billy Mitchell's voice being used for the narration, although I think it's just a recording of him. The grandiose nature of Billy Mitchell's speech is on full display with both the narration and his characterization. At a glance, this seems like an expression of self-awareness. However, while some of Billy Mitchell's unsavory character traits are on display here, some of the traits on display for Steve Wiebe are entirely fabricated, not just embellished. In the documentary The King of Kong, Billy played the villain and Steve played the hero, essentially. There are many qualities to this play that lead me to believe that this is an attempt to reverse this narrative. The narrative that Billy is an unlikable cheater. Also, fun fact, Anthony Cumia from Opie and Anthony is on Team Billy Mitchell.
Anthony knows what this is about. Team Wiebe?
No.
What?
Billy Mitchell's the man.
That was probably the last place I was expecting anybody to talk about Billy Mitchell.
He didn't cheat, Walter.
The others. I don't have much to say about Brian or Walter, but since they're both main characters in the play, I figured I might as well include them. Brian Koo is essentially Billy Mitchell's prodigy and was an important character in the King of Kong documentary from 2007. In the documentary, Brian seemed extraordinarily loyal to Billy Mitchell. The play adds some drama to this dynamic, which I think is a good theatrical decision. Walter Day is a close friend of Billy Mitchell and creator of Twin Galaxies. Walter Day left Twin Galaxies in 2010 in pursuit of music. The ownership of Twin Galaxies would eventually fall into the hands of Jace Hall in 2014. Walter Day is quite the character. Something tells me that, with some digging, he might be a good subject to make a video on at some point. But I digress. The portrayal of Walter Day seems relatively accurate, often leaning into his old age to make jokes. For whatever reason, I have the impression of Walter Day that he is far more complicated than he leads on. The music. The music and sound is actually pretty good and is quite fitting. There are some sound issues here and there though. The most notable in my opinion is that Brian Koo's character comes in quiet like 3 or 4 times. They're able to fix the problem the first time, but they manage to run into the same issue like 2 or 3 times. My guess would be there's not much of a PA system or mixer at all. So these are touch strips on a machine jam. They're not exactly the same as faders, but for this purpose, they function the same. So all they would have had to do to fix the level problems with the mics is that. And then that should have permanently fixed the problem. So they have to control most of or all of the volume through the master channel. I don't see any other way they could run into this problem, fix it, then run into it again. These issues are pretty minor though, and the rest of the music and audio is solid. The vocals weren't mind-blowing, but they were better than I was expecting. To be honest, dancing to the music while watching it was sometimes the only way that I could get through my 4th, 5th, and 6th watch. This is a good time to mention that this play is about 1 hour and 38 minutes long. As somebody who is a fan of Billy Mitchell lore, I got quite a bit out of this play. But watching just about anything that long, that many times, in that short of a period of time, will start to wear on you. That being said, if you're a fan of Billy Mitchell lore or video game drama, then you'll probably get at least something out of this play. However, as with much of Billy Mitchell's history, there are some darker elements to this.
He's still my nemesis, okay?
The petty. I mentioned earlier that some of Steve's traits were completely fabricated. I know this is a work of fiction, but I don't see how it adds entertainment value to change Steve Weeby's character this drastically, at least without giving the same treatment to the other characters. In the 2007 documentary, Steve Weeby comes off as a loving husband and a great father. There were some awkward moments here and there, but ultimately he was a likable character. In the play, however, he is far more vindictive and borderline abusive to his wife.
10 years of Billy Mitchell and the Donkey Kong.
Maybe I could see this working if Billy Mitchell's character was also given the toxicity treatment. Although there are some jokes at Billy's expense here, they're not nearly as cutthroat as the ones made at Steve's expense. Plus, if you know about Billy Mitchell, the jokes about him make sense. The jokes at Steve's expense don't really have anything to do with his history whatsoever. And as I said earlier, Nicole Weeby's character is also inaccurate.
My dad was right. Don't let that Donkey Kong nerd knock you up, Nicole.
The wives. While it seems like they went through a lot of effort to over-exaggerate Nicole Weeby's character, which is understandable, it is a theater production after all, I find it odd there's no character representation for Billy's wife, Evelyn. I bet an interview with Billy's wife would be very interesting, although I'd imagine it'd be impossible to set up. The actor playing Nicole Weeby in this production is my favorite out of these 5. The exaggeration of this character is something I understand far more than the exaggeration of Steve Weeby's character. If they would have kept Steve Weeby's naturally subdued behavior, these two would have had better contrast and chemistry in the play. However, with both of them behaving over the top, it just seems like a smear job from Billy Mitchell. Like I said, the two characters who are portrayed in the most toxic manner are the ones who weren't in contact with the production company like the other 3 main characters. I have no idea how much influence those 3 wound up having over this production, although the slant in Billy Mitchell's favor seems like a very unlikely coincidence.
He didn't know I...
The Cure. The hit song Pictures of You was used in the documentary The King of Kong: A Fistful of Quarters in 2007. The Cure has no other relation to this video.
This is on the internet.
The Scandal. Billy Mitchell was recently on the hook for cheating. While the likes of Guinness World Records have exonerated him, many others in the community seem to think he's guilty. It's important to note that Steve Weeby was never accused of cheating, at least not formally. Yet, in the plot of the play, of course, Steve Weeby is a cheater.
Weeby's cheating. The board is rigged. I saw it.
I'm aware this is a piece of fiction, but is the best they can do just a reverse of the King of Kong documentary? Plus, it's hard to tell if the audience is aware this is fiction or not. Steve Weeby is not the type of person to fight for relevancy in the gaming community for almost half a century. Even in fiction, the deck is infinitely stacked against guys like Steve.
I should have stayed in the back with the Gorgar.
The court tape. Somehow, one of Billy Mitchell's court appearances got on YouTube. Big ups. This is an interesting video for several reasons. Although what intrigues me is Billy Mitchell's more docile nature. It seems like there is still some disingenuous behavior here, but since he's in a court of law, he's not able to be as aggressive as he normally is in public appearances. Carl Jobst has a great step-by-step breakdown of this video, so I'll just play some of the highlights.
I heard the gentleman speak earlier about your bow tie, and I concur. Matter of fact, I have a West Point tie on myself.
Thank you, sir.
I will get it done. As a matter of fact, I'm in a position shortly where I'll actually get an attorney, and I know attorneys give you less headaches than pro se.
No, not necessarily.
Okay. But the statute of limitations would not come into play because of the without prejudice, is that the case?
I can't tell you that because I'd be giving you legal advice if I did.
I think one of the most notable lines is towards the end when he says this wasn't what he was expecting.
This is not what I expected, to be honest.
Whether Billy Mitchell is guilty or not, none of this was ever brought into question for decades. It wasn't until recently that this all started to blow up. However, people are more hyper-aware than ever, especially on the internet. Many people who didn't grow up around the internet aren't used to today's standard of scrutiny. Suing somebody over a critical YouTube video is not a rational response. Even if you win in a court of law, you still have to deal with the court of public opinion.
Maybe the best person of this era.
The lawsuits. I'm not a lawyer, but you could probably make an entire video on each of these lawsuits. I think it will paint a more clear picture if I include a surface-level explanation of each of them. Billy Mitchell versus Twin Galaxies. Twin Galaxies was actually created by Walter Day, a close friend of Billy Mitchell's. However, Twin Galaxies was sold to Jace Hall in 2014. Billy Mitchell's scores were removed from Twin Galaxies records in 2018 due to the accusations he was using an emulator. The debate whether Billy cheated or not was a hot topic for a while. In 2020, Billy Mitchell filed a lawsuit against Twin Galaxies for defamation. Billy Mitchell versus David Race. There doesn't seem to be a lot of information about this one. This had to do with the consent of the recording of a phone call between David Race and Billy Mitchell, as far as I can tell. It's worth noting that Carl Jobst made a fundraiser to help David Race and others. This was to help defendants of Billy Mitchell's lawsuits with legal fees. The creator of Minecraft, Notch, has also offered to help those out with their legal fees. Billy Mitchell versus Donkey Kong Forum. This is another one that doesn't have that much information around it. It looks like another defamation suit, but it was already dropped at the beginning of this year. So far, none of these lawsuits have been fruitful for Mr. Mitchell. Billy Mitchell versus Carl Jobst. This is another defamation suit, and it is currently ongoing. I suggest checking out some of the videos in question on Carl's channel. Something tells me the fact that Carl lives in Australia and Billy lives in America is going to cause problems for this case, and that something was a Carl Jobst video. Billy Mitchell versus Regular Show. This is probably the most notable lawsuit, given that it's against a popular cartoon owned by Warner Brothers. Given the amount of resources Warner Brothers have to defend their case, there was no way this lawsuit was ever going to go through, especially given the absurdity of the case itself, leading a judge to declare Billy Mitchell is not a giant floating head, according to an article. Billy Mitchell versus Apollo Legend. Out of respect for Apollo and his family, I'm not going to go too much into this. I'm glad that Billy Mitchell realized that $1 million was a ridiculous amount to ask from Apollo Legend. I just really wish that some of Apollo's old videos on Billy Mitchell were still up. I wish he was still around to make videos, to do anything. But that's just a wish. Rest in peace, Apollo Legend. You deserved better.
A lot of people hate Billy Mitchell.
The hate. Billy Mitchell's popularity, perhaps infamy, really started to pick up around the time his records were removed from Twin Galaxies. And with any popular subject on the internet comes haters. I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily, it's just a part of the online environment. However, this was during a time in both the YouTube and gaming communities when calling out cheaters was becoming far more common and popular. The timing of Jace Hall buying Twin Galaxies as well as the YouTube landscape at the time were definitely not in Billy Mitchell's favor. It doesn't seem like Billy has had to face proper scrutiny for decades. That's probably why his reaction to the community was so hostile. Although going back and watching some of the videos that were made on Billy Mitchell around that time, sure, people were critical and taking their time to dunk on him, but they weren't hateful. The way Billy Mitchell handled the situation definitely didn't help either. Trying to stop public criticism through the court system is only going to invite more criticism. If I had to guess, I would say Billy Mitchell probably holds more contempt than those he calls haters. Personally, I don't have any hate for Billy Mitchell. I think he's a bit of a lolcow, but he's highly entertaining. I wish he had more of an online presence and that he interacted with the community more. If Billy just had a little bit more self-awareness, I bet he could be a positive force in the gaming world. But this hostile eye for an eye approach doesn't seem to be getting him anywhere. Perhaps he could open his mind to newer competitive scenes and host events. We can only hope. The finale.
Billy Mitchell always has a plan.
So right as Billy Mitchell is saying his own name and is probably about to say some sort of motto or tagline, a stereotypical American rock song interrupts him. Beautiful. If anybody can tell what he's saying at the end, I would love to know. I'm pretty sure it's Billy Mitchell always has a plan.
Dang it, Walt! You made me lose my quarter.
The conclusion. Billy Mitchell is quite a complicated and interesting figure. There are a lot of controversies surrounding Billy Mitchell, but it's hard to draw any particular conclusion. And as luck would have it, we don't have to reach any conclusions regarding Billy Mitchell yet, because he's back on YouTube. While it's nothing big, it's just a channel trailer that's less than a minute long, it's the first thing he's posted in about 4 months. And it was posted just a few days ago. Billy seems to have big plans, and I'm genuinely excited to see what he has up his sleeve. Just because somebody has made errors doesn't mean their entire character should be discounted. Billy Mitchell is kind of like the rogue Willy Wonka of gaming. I'm certainly not a fan of the lawsuits, but things are more interesting with a good balance of characters. Oh boy. That was quite a project. That one was a doozy. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed working on it, but it was a lot of work for sure. The workload was high for this one, but I feel like it paid off. I feel like the extra effort into gathering more information, figuring out a different way to approach the narrative, put more effort into the editing, I feel like it's worth it. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. And I'm just gonna keep trucking, and I've got a board full of ideas. I'm just gonna keep working on the next thing. If Billy Mitchell does wind up seeing this, there really are no hard feelings. Billy Mitchell is a difficult figure to talk about. There's just so much going on with him. There are literally decades of history. There are different points in his career where people had different perceptions of him. It's kind of hard to include that all in one package and have it make sense. So I hope I did a good job with that. I don't know, we'll have to see. It's one thing I've realized is how I perceive the information as I'm making the video is very different from how other people watch the video for the first time. So that's something I'm getting more used to, and I'm trying to include more context and make it easier for people to follow and understand certain things. I know sometimes I go off on kind of weird tangents or make strange points, but I mean, I'm not trying to say what everybody else is saying. I want to say something unique. I want this channel to be something new, not just, you know, for nothing. Anyway, I had a lot of fun making this project. I hope you guys had fun watching it, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. Shout out to the best subscriber squad on all of YouTube. I hope everybody has a terrific day.
Great. This breaks boundaries.